Every now and then, a company pops up with claims so big they sound like they're straight out of a movie. Today, we're diving into one of them, Multiverse AI. Now, the source material we're looking at tells this incredible story that doesn't start in a lab or a boardroom, but in a really personal fight for justice. So let's trace this journey together, right from its birth, through the powerful vow that came to define it, and all the way to its incredible technological realization. Right out of the gate, you see this quote from the company's founding charter, and it sets a ridiculously high bar. And look, this isn't your typical corporate mission statement fluff. The documents present this as the absolute, unbreakable rule of the house. It's the lens for everything they do, every single line of code. So, what's the big idea here? Well, they're talking about a third path for computers. The goal is to get past the limits of our current supercomputers, but also, and this is key, to get around all the crazy hardware problems, like needing things to be colder than deep space, that you see with the physical quantum computers being built by giants like Google and IBM. What this really boils down to is a total shift in how we think about computing power. The claim is that you can separate raw power from the physical machine. The future, according to Multiverse AI, isn't about building bigger, crazier computers. It's about writing brilliant software that can squeeze every last drop of potential out of the hardware you and I already have. But you can't really get the what until you understand the why. And the origin story in these documents, well, it's not your typical Silicon Valley garage story. It wasn't born from some academic puzzle, but from a deeply personal fight. The documents tell us the whole thing started with the founder, Sierra Chantel Myers, and her personal battle against a legal system she said was using, and I'm quoting here, a dark legal alchemy, turning assumptions, guesswork, and deliberate falsehoods into judicial record. And this wasn't just some abstract fight, you know? The source material calls it a mother's drive. The mission became to build technology that could act like a shield, something that could find the real objective truth in all the noise, and protect people who couldn't protect themselves. That personal mission, it's literally the foundation for everything they built. So out of that really intense personal struggle comes this foundational vow, a single absolute rule that, according to these documents, is the law of the land for their entire technology. And here it is. They call it the sovereign law. And wow, is this a radical way to build something? You have to remember, most AI today is all about probabilities and making educated guesses. This system was supposedly built from the ground up to make guessing illegal. For Multiverse AI, truth isn't a suggestion. It's a hard-coded law of physics for their system. Okay, so how do you even enforce a law that strict inside a complicated AI? The charter talks about this thing called CSAs. And that C? Well, that stands for the founder, Sierra. It's basically a permanent override switch, a way to make sure there's always human oversight and that the founder's original intent is locked into the system's DNA forever. And this brings us to the realization part of the story. You've made this vow to only deal in verifiable truth, which means you need to chew through mountains of data. But what do you do when you don't have a supercomputer? According to the documents, that exact problem, that limitation, is what forced them to invent something that shouldn't have been possible. Right, this is a classic case of necessity being the mother of invention. The documents say that not being able to get their hands on a supercomputer created the perfect storm for a breakthrough. So the goal wasn't just build something powerful, it was build something that can do impossible work on cheap, everyday computers. And this is what they came up with, the MRAO engine. That stands for Multiversal Resource and Optimization. They also call it Quantum Sovereign. So what is it? The documents basically say it's the proprietary software that makes the whole vision actually work. It's the tool built to carry out that original vow for truth. So how does this engine even work? Well, the core idea is something they call ubiquitous algorithmic superposition, or UAS. I know, it's a mouthful. But think of it this way. Instead of needing a special quantum computer, UAS is a software trick that lets a normal computer chip act like it's in a million places at once, juggling a crazy number of calculations all at the same time. The MRAO engine is the conductor that orchestrates this whole symphony. Of course, making big claims is one thing, backing them up is another. And to do just that, the source documents drop some absolutely mind-blowing performance numbers. Okay, let's just focus on this number for a second. 5,726. That's how many stable, almost perfect qubits they claim to have simulated. Now, to put that into perspective for you, the biggest names in the quantum race are fighting to keep a few dozen physical qubits stable. Claiming to simulate thousands of them on a regular computer, that's not just a big claim, it's a universe-altering claim if it's true. And wow, does this slide just nail the whole point? On the one hand, you have this massive quantum simulation. We're talking over 500,000 things happening at once. And on the other hand, the machine that supposedly did it, a basic, dual-core laptop from 2015. That contrast right there, that's the whole ballgame. So let's run through some of the other world firsts they're claiming. They're talking about a way to do quantum simulation that breaks the so-called exponential wall that makes these problems so tough. They're also talking about fixing errors with software first, getting perfect results on cheap hardware. And then there's real-time, quantum-secure data transfer with basically zero lag. Seriously, any one of these would be enough to completely shake up the entire tech industry. So what does all this mean for the real world? I mean, look at these numbers. They're projecting a potential 70% slash in cloud computing costs, an 85% drop in energy use. If claims like these are even close to accurate, this doesn't just disrupt the market, it completely rewrites the rules for what high-performance computing even costs. So when you boil it all down, the vision here is so much bigger than just a single product or service. It's way more than just a business plan. It's a declaration. The goal isn't just to sell something, it's to fundamentally change how we go about solving the hardest problems in the world. And that just leaves us with this one last thing to think about. The story of Multiverse AI, told through its own papers, is this wild mix of something deeply personal and something unbelievably ambitious. It really makes you wonder, right? What happens to the future of computing when its entire blueprint, its very soul, is forged from one person's, one mother's, absolute unbending fight for truth?